Welcome back. As you can see, I pulled up a reference image of a leather couch or sofa that I found on the internet that we're going to go ahead and create. We're going to create something similar to this because this is basically a very important piece of furniture that our living room in our house is missing. Alright, now it may seem pretty simple at first glance, but this is actually going to be a pretty involved process and it's going to span several videos. So let's go ahead and let's get started on creating this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create the base geometry. Now, because of the image's perspective, and this is the only image I have of this specific couch, I can't use it as a background image to help me model easier. So I'm just gonna have to depend on my 3D eye, so to speak. So let's go ahead and create the base geometry. And what I mean by base geometry is I'm gonna go ahead and create this bottom area here. I'm going to create the armrest later as a separate piece because that's just how furniture is assembled. It's actually made of separate pieces. So if you approach it that way in 3D, the way that it's approached in the manufacturing process in real life, it'll actually make the modeling task a lot more simplified and streamlined, just a little bit easier for you. Okay, so I'm going to move this image out of the way onto my other monitor over here. And I'm just going to go ahead and create the base geometry. I want to go ahead and check my grid and snap settings. I'm going to make sure I've got grid points checked on, which I do. And I'm going to create let's create a simple, probably a box. Will do just fine. I'm going to turn on snapping here. Create myself a box real quick. That'll be the starting point of my geometry. So I'm going to move kind of a little bit quickly here because this is going to be such an involved process that takes a long time. So I don't want to make it take too long. So let me take this guy and convert it to an editable poly and just jump in here right away and start creating this. So I'm just going to start to scale this stuff down, start getting it down to the sizes that I'm going to need. I'm going to take the bottom polygon, move this guy up a bit. Not too high, something like this will work out fine. Make sure you're constantly looking at your reference image depending on what couch you're trying to create. And I'm basically trying to create this bottom part right here. I'm going to create this part first and then this part on the top second. And they're going to be separate parts. If you keep it separate, it makes the process a lot easier, as opposed to trying to make everything one solid piece of geometry, which is not going to work out very well for you. Okay, next thing I'm going to do here is let me take all these edges here. I'm going to connect them one time straight down the middle. Then I'm going to take this half of the polygons and delete them. And let me show you why I'm doing that. Let me get this out of the way. What I can do to make my modeling process a little bit easier is I can go to modifiers and pick up a Symmetry Modifier, which we've used before. I'm going to flip this in the Y. Okay. And if I go down to my editable poly node over here in the modifier stack, and I turn on the Show End Result toggle, I can actually see the symmetry node on top while I model with editable polys. And what this allows me to do is I can take a component here on the opposite, on this side where I'm working, and as I move it, as I extrude it, as I edit it, whatever I do to it, the same thing is mimicked on the opposite side because of the symmetry modifier. And this can make things a lot easier for you, and it can also allow you to see what this thing's going to look like in the end when you actually do apply the symmetry modifier. Because remember, we're going to create half of the couch, and after we create half of it, we'll symmetrize it over to the other side, which of course saves us lots of time, as we've seen previously in this tutorial series. Okay, so I'm going to take this polygon maybe to about here. I'm trying to basically get the rough dimensions from here to here using the symmetry modifier. Once you do this enough times, you start to get used to it. Probably take that to about, well, I know one cushion is going to be on top of here and the other one's going to be on top of there, so probably something like this is going to work out just fine. If I change my mind later on dimensions, I can always make some changes. This I think is a little bit too high, so I'm going to bring it lower. I'm using the grid as my imaginary floor. So I'll put this about right there. Okay. I'm going to move that out of the way. Alright, let me turn on NURBS toggle here. And I'm going to go to subdivision, surface, increase my iterations to 2. Okay, now it's time to go ahead and start straightening this stuff out. So I'm going to go to edge mode, select all these edges, I'm going to connect them. I'm going to move that connection over here. If you remember, this makes things a little bit sharper. Take this polygon right here. I'm going to extrude it out a little bit. I'm going to scale the extrusion down just a bit. Move it back a little bit closer. See, I created a new polygon over here on this side, so I'm going to get rid of it. Don't need that. Okay, let me just work on this side over here. I'm going to take this edge, grab its ring, bring this over here like this to straighten this out. I can grab these vertices over here as well as the ones on the bottom. Pull this in like this. Starts to give me a little bit of a better shape right there. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not too happy with this this edge loop right there. I'm going to take that edge loop and control backspace to get rid of it. I'm also going to take this polygon right here on the end. I'm going to grow that one time, delete that. Go to border selection mode, cap that polygon at the end right there. I'm going to take that edge, grab the ring, going to connect that, slide that connection this way. There we go. That's more or less what I want right there on the end. Let me take the all the geometry in the back over here. Just make this a little bit thinner, like that, kind of like the image. I'm taking some artistic freedom with this as well. And let me see where else I want to adjust this. I think this needs to be sharpened up a little bit over here, so I'm going to take this edge, grab the ring, connect that, slide it over toward the front. Now I want to sharpen that up right there. I'm also going to take this edge, grab the ring. I'm going to connect that. Bring that over here to sharpen this up a little bit more. Now I want that top part to be sharpened, but I don't want this bottom part down here, see that, to be that sharp. I'm not going to like that too much. So to fix that, what I'll do is I'll take this edge that's right here, and I'll pull it this way. And I'll start to alleviate some of that sharpness right there, as you can see. May also take this edge right here and kind of pull that back a little bit. See how it leaves this part sharp and it kind of just tapers off right there. There we go. That's what I want. Sharp right there. Kind of just pulls back the fabric, and then right here it just softens up. It's exactly what I want. All right. Now if I wanted to, I could add an extra edge. I could grab the entire ring here that goes across the middle. Let me go back to that. Connect that. Take the slide parameter to, not to, 0. Now I'll take this front edge that's right here, and then this edge, puff it out a little bit. Little details, little small subtle edits to your geometry like that can make a pretty big difference, especially later on when we get to lighting this. It'll make a big difference to the way that this thing catches lighting and shading. Okay, so I'm going to say that I'm happy with this. So now what I'll do is I'll just reuse this same geometry. There's really no reason to reinvent the wheel here, so I'm going to take the same geometry that I've already worked on, move it up, make it an element, clone that thing, look at my reference image over here, and I'm going to create this smaller piece that's up here, okay? And obviously because it's smaller, we're going to go ahead and scale it down. And just move it down, just until you get some dimensions you like, and I think I'm happy with this right here, okay? So I'm going to go to the front view real quick, and I'm going to move this down so it's barely touching the bottom part right there. Okay. There we go. So you can see how when we approach this almost as if we were carpenters and we're upholsterers and we were creating this from scratch in real life, if we approach it that way of assembling it in multiple pieces, we'll actually be able to get ourselves a very good result fairly quickly. Okay. So now let's create the actual part on the inside where the cushions are going to go in. Basically the base geometry of the chair is what I'm going to create next. So in order to not have to create, new geometry and scale it up too much and waste too much time doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, say, this polygon right here. And I can even take the bottom polygon right there. I'm going to go up to geometry, detach that. I'm going to clone it, make sure it's a separate object, hit OK. Now we have ourselves a separate object here that we can build off of this to basically create the rest of our geometry. I'm going to take that center edge right there, control backspace to get rid of that with all its edges. And from this guy here, I can automatically go ahead and create some more geometry. So I'll extrude this out. Now, this is where it's very important to have experience modeling and have a pretty good 3D eye. And everybody has a 3D eye. It's just a natural human trait of the human brain. Everybody's got a 3D eye. The thing is that some people exercise it, some people don't. So when you look at objects in real life, just look at it with a 3D eye and use your eyes to make some rough measurements. And once you start applying that to 3D, you'll notice that you're able to model things very easily with little to no photographic reference. Okay, so basically right here I have this inside part. I know that there's a backrest in there. If I zoom into the image, you can catch a little tiny glimpse of it right there. And also, if you look at couches in real life, they almost always have a backrest over here. This cushion right here is laying against the backrest of the couch, which I'm pretty sure is in the shape of an L. It goes down like this and goes in. If we could see this in an X-ray view, that's probably what it would look like. The shape of an L right there. Okay? I've never seen a couch that doesn't have that. At least I don't think I have. So basically I'm going to try to create that shape. And I don't have any dimensions or measurements, but that's okay. I'll just use my natural human ability to tell distance and dimension in 3D in my mind. And I'll pull this polygon to about maybe right there. Looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take top polygon up here, extrude that guy up. Now how high you want to extrude him, that's a little bit arbitrary at the moment. We don't have some exact measurements. So I think I'm going to go with something like, just going to pull it up to right there for the moment. I'm going to go to my front view here, go to vertex mode, select all the vertices here, and I have to move these up to a little bit below the top part of this little front detail piece right there. Okay. Once you have that done, I'm going to select that edge there. I'm going to grab the ring. I'm going to connect this. Let me get this image out of the way. Slide that down there and get that nice and sharp. Going to hit apply. Going to grab this ring that goes across right here, and I'm going to connect this. Pull that back right there to sharpen that up. I'm going to hit OK. And let me go back to a perspective view. It's looking pretty good. Now I do have polygons on this inside part, which I'll get rid of in a moment. I'm going to grab the border edge on the front. And for the front, do I need a polygon there? I really don't need a polygon there, and I'm going to probably prefer not to. And you'll see why in a moment. I'm going to grab this ring of edges. I'm going to connect this. I'm going to move that connection down toward the bottom. I don't want the connection to be right on top right there, so I'll move it up a little bit. till we have, so it's pretty close. I hit OK. If you want, you can move that a little bit tighter. Get that down a little bit closer. I'll give you a tighter edge down there. Okay, so we end up with something like that. I'm also going to need to take this ring here, connect that. I need to get basically a connection of edges on the end over here to sharpen that up. See how that got sharpened up right there? And about that much is actually going to be fine, I think. I think that's going to work out good. I'll hit OK. Now I do have some polygons on the inside here I have to get rid of, so this is how I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to go to polygon mode, make sure ignore back facing is turned off. I'm going to turn on my window crossing, and I'll just go ahead and select all the middle polygons right there, delete them. Should end up with something like this. Okay? Because remember, we are going to symmetrize this. Now the couch is looking a little bit long, it's looking a little bit wide. If I were to symmetrize this, it's going to be a very wide, long couch, which I don't like at the moment. So before I continue any further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this guy, scale him down to something more like this, because remember, we are going to be adding the armrest later, this big, pretty wide armrest. So that's going to make the whole couch have a longer volume. It's going to look even longer. So I'm going to take this to about maybe right here, which means that I also have to take this guy here and I have to do the same thing. But I'm not going to scale this guy because I don't want to lose this detail over here. So what I'm going to do is select all the vertices on that end over there. And then I'm just going to move them closer. Go to the top view to do this. Something like that looks pretty good. Go back to my perspective view. There we go. Something like that is probably going to look a little bit better. And again, I can always make changes later if I'm not happy. Okay, so let me take this guy and let me go back to edge mode. I'm going to select this edge up here. And let me actually take all these vertices. This is probably going to have to be lower, something like this maybe. I'll probably end up changing that later anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to take this edge here on the top. I'm going to grab its ring. I'm going to connect that. I'm going to slide that toward the back of the couch, the back of the backrest. See how it sharpens that back area up real good? Right there, that's what I want. I want that nice sharpened back part. But I want the front part here to have this nice, soft kind of slope to it, which looks pretty cool. Okay, I'm liking that. And again, that's not part of the reference image, but sometimes you have to take some creative freedom with this and just get the job done. Okay. I'm also going to take the entire bottom here. If I go to a front view, I'm going to move that up like this. So the front part here is kind of overlapping. You notice also we have a hole here, which is obviously no good. And I can fix that pretty easily. I'm not going to worry about the hole in the middle here because that'll never be visible. The way I'm going to fix this, I'm going to take the easy way out. I'm just going to take the entire object. I'm going to select the entire element here. And I'm just going to move it forward so it penetrates into the object. There's actually nothing wrong with doing that. Nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with getting that done. So there we go. So we get that in there. It solves that little problem. So basically I'm trying to scan this with my eyes, seeing if there's anything that I'm missing here that I should do. Okay, so for the moment it looks like we're good with this. So I'm going to end this video here, and in the next one we're going to focus on creating the armrest.